Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to another exciting adventure on Radio Wasteland. I'm your host, Chauncey Hallworth. This is my co-host, Kara Kittrick. Kara, do you have any news for us today?
Yes, I do. So, top story this week, scientists have detected a mysterious radio burst, sending signals to Earth every 16 days. The burst originates from a galaxy 500 million light years away, and while MIT doesn't think it's aliens, so-called fast radio bursts like this one are some of the most mysterious phenomena in modern astronomy. This burst was detected by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiments radio telescope, but numerous other scientific organizations have weighed in on this exciting find. Although an obvious explanation is that an object is orbiting the source of the signals and obstructs its path most of the time, this would not explain the pinpoint regularity of the signal. The other obvious explanation, aliens, has been dismissed by MIT due to the exceedingly high energy of the phenomenon. For more than a year, the signal played once an hour for 4 days, followed by a little over 12 days of silence before starting up again. So, very mysterious. In related news, Breakthrough Listen, a project dedicated to finding extraterrestrial life, released its second major dump of SETI data to the public, a survey of the entire Milky Way. Private individuals are encouraged to comb through the data in search of anything suspicious. In news closer to home, the UK is getting ready to release its classified UFO files, and most Americans want the US government to do the same. 61% in a recent survey want the government to release its X-Files, although this does not actually imply that any such X-Files actually exist. Only 58% believe that the government actively investigates extraterrestrial life, which is still well over half. Finally, a video went viral of a man in an Australian bar saving the life of a lizard that drowned in his beer via mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. There's nothing paranormal about that, but if I have to know this, then so do you. Back to you, Chauncey.
All right, saved a lizard with mouth-to-mouth. How big of a lizard are we talking?
Well, it's Australia, so, like, unsettlingly big.
Oh, yeah.
It's like sort of more of a gecko iguana type of situation.
Right. You could probably still put the whole head in your mouth and exhale.
I mean, yeah, you could, but should you?
Yeah, I mean, it is Australia. They are all poisonous.
True.
And then, that's a whole heap of extraterrestrial news.
A lot of UFO stuff this week.
Well, I mean, it's beyond UFO. It's the possibilities of the government and scientists knowing stuff or learning stuff about the possibility of life being out there.
True.
You know, the radio burst, they always discount aliens, which, has worked out in their favor so far. But, I find that guys like Michio Kaku, when they sort of say, yeah, sure, it could be, I think they inspire a lot of people.
To be fair, they didn't say it's not aliens. They just said, we don't think it's aliens. So,
Right.
They said it's unlikely, but
they
don't know what it is. No, they never do, and I think, I don't know, that's just going to make it all sweeter when it's like leading MIT scientists are like, we don't know what to tell you, it's aliens.
Yeah, whoops, that was aliens.
Okay, that one was aliens.
Right, yeah. But it is interesting, these whole... like a couple years back, they had the one that people proposed might be a Dyson sphere, and then they got this one, and it's inspiring that we find more and more, but the pinpoint accuracy, why is it shooting right at us?
I think is so weird about this signal is the weird timetable, beep once an hour every 4 days, then 12 days of silence, then it just repeats.
Right.
What is up, like, that doesn't sound like nature? Like,
right.
Nature can be precise, but I mean, even the orbits of planets, it's not so precise all the time.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking, it's like, I always think about this, and I think we're a little too stuck on this sort of life as we know it sort of idea, because, they're talking about them with their levels of power, but, maybe they're in a world where their own life existence takes more power, where it's all relative or something like that. I don't know. After finding out how smart cuttlefish are, I'm a little loose now on what exactly intelligence means,
Yeah, and I too thought when they said we don't think it's aliens because the energies are just so high, we don't think an intelligent civilization could do that. And it's like, well, how do you know?
Yeah,
we have totally. One data point,
right. You can only know what you know,
Exactly. So.
And then these X-Files, the government has to be investigating the whack jobs. I mean, whack jobs are who blow up buildings and stuff. Of course, they have X-Files that deal with whack job information. Even if it's not true, they have X-Files that are full of whack job information because they walk into a room and be all, oh, this guy was building bombs and he's obsessed with dogmen. Of course, they now are making some sort of, I mean, you got the whack job representative that made Bigfoot erotica. So now the government has a file on Bigfoot erotica.
Denver Riggleman.
And rightfully so. Rightfully so. They should have that file. That's what I pay taxes for them to track Bigfoot eroticists, because they also, build bombs.
You pay taxes so that the government can surveil abnormal citizens?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, no comment. But that actually kind of raises a question for me. Has there ever been a case of like a UFO nut going, causing violence? I don't think like UFO guys tend to be very violent. I think it's mostly like the Illuminati controls the government tends.
Of course, I don't think Bigfoot eroticists are necessarily violent either.
I mean, Bigfoot eroticists might be. I'm not gonna give them any leeway. They know what they did, but
yeah. To be fair, they better be ready to make love like a Klingon, because a Bigfoot's, Bigfoot's going to get violent, I assume. Yeah. I mean, I've watched my dog take advantage of my friend's dog, and it's not friendly, it's pushy. It's my dog's a creeper.
I was doing some reading on a cryptid site recently, and according to field research, it seems that your average Bigfoot is actually a very tender, gentle lover.
Oh, God.
So I don't know. There's some misconceptions on that point, I think, in the popular consciousness.
I'm not sure which is more disturbing, the fact that they know that Bigfoot is a gentle lover, or that they know that your average Bigfoot is a gentle lover. That they've been through so many of them that they're just
always going to be outliers.
Yeah, totally.
To be fair, though, I did just make that up.
Oh, okay. And finally, in personal news, in prepping for the doomsday, I want to learn to fix, prepare meats. And I bought a food dehydrator, and I made my first batch of jerky.
Nice.
And I gave myself brutal food poisoning. And I basically was stuck in the bathroom for hours. So round 2 begins this week.
Round 2?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to learn to do it.
You didn't give up?
No.
I would have given up.
I'm not giving up.
I hate food poisoning. I mean, everyone hates food poisoning.
I thought I was going to die. My vision was going, and like pins and needles in my face and everything. I thought I was going to die. I was sitting on the toilet. I thought Terry was going to find me, hear the thud and find me, butt up, pants around my ankles, dead on the bathroom floor. I thought it was going to be the worst, most embarrassing death ever.
I think you might be an anti-survivalist. Because your ordinary survivalist uses their survival skills to, keep themselves alive in a dangerous world. You are using your survival skills to harm yourself in a world that is not particularly dangerous.
Yeah, well, in you know, at the risk of being too sentimental, Kara, my little millennial, my children are also millennials, and I have seen them give up on things that they should try over and over. So I figured if I failed in the most embarrassing of ways and then tried again and succeeded, it would teach them some sort of valuable lesson. So this is my goal. My
giving
goal
yourself
is
food poisoning with homemade jerky is actually you being a good parent.
No, how I deal with it is. No, yes.
Okay, I think I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, and a terrible husband because I tried to get my wife to eat it too, but she wouldn't. All right.
Oh, no.
It's time. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Our guest tonight is one Samuel Hofman. Nibiru is the topic. I'm sure you've heard him on here before, and if you haven't, stick around, check it out. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest Samuel Hofman from Montana Skywatchers. Samuel, we've had you on the show many times before. We always enjoy having it. It's always something new. But, let's start off talking about this Empire Orb. You sent in the videos. I saw some photos of this thing. And, it's like a lot of the time I see things and I'm just all, okay, maybe. I'm looking, I'm trying, I'm getting there. But this recent video of the Empire Orb and a few of the other ones are really quite amazing. It's kind of like an actual Death Star. In fact, one of the one of the photos you sent in actually had it juxtaposed next to the Death Star, and it really looked remarkably like it. What do we think this thing is?
Well, this goes back through some history here. It goes back all the way to 2009 when we first started up Montana Skywatchers. And we were, back then there was hardly any of this other than the UFO sites and all of that. And that most of that stuff didn't exist. And then, I was always searching the feed for, new and cool stuff. And then we stumbled on to the Norway Spiral the day it happened. And then we sat there and there was only 20 or 30 members at that time. And we sat there and we had a watch party, and we all sat there and watched this video over and over and again of the spiral, which you can't really, there are a few copies out there somewhere. But if you go back and you watch the Norway Spiral, you see this object that actually ends up through some of the central crazed illuminations and this beam that comes off the ground and all of this stuff. And this is over Germany or Norway. And at the time, there was a whole G7 summit meeting where Obama and everybody was all there on the day that this all happened. And so we watched this object come through, and it literally looked like the Death Star with a little bit of minor color variation, and it looked more gravelly, like there was dirt accumulation on the outside of it. Well, then, so being that we'd watched it and we debunked it and we argued about it literally for about a week. And then, we put it on the side, and I didn't discuss a bunch of, crazy conspiracy theories, because back at that time we had to have a far more proof before we ever brought topic up on the site, because we wanted to stick to a scientific approach rather than a gossip version. So anyway, along about after Montana Skywatcher started going, and we first started seeing some of the evidence of the planets and everything else, I was outside in my yard again, and I see this orb drop out of the clouds, and there's these cold clouds are vaping around off of it as it breaks free out of the clouds, and then it stops in place. And so I knew automatically it wasn't like an asteroid or a meteor or anything, because how does it drop out of the clouds and stop? And then it changed direction, and then it turned around, and I saw that open the small facial hole, which is almost like an eyelid with a little dot in the middle, and all of a sudden that blue light turned on, and I just stood there and froze. And I went, wow. And had I not actually seen this thing with my own eyes, and I sat there for a good 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then eventually the light went off, and it cruised over to the side for a while into the next bank of clouds and was gone. And I went, holy crap. And I couldn't believe what I had seen. And having seen that light turn on, if the darn thing would have been on by itself at my first viewing, I don't think I would have even reacted as strongly as I did. But having watched that thing stop change directions, turn around, and then that light come on and directly beam my direction. So anyway, following that, we started seeing sightings of the darn thing. People in Germany and Europe and the United States started getting pictures of this thing. And you know how the internet people like to, oh, it's the all-seeing eye. And they, and they started all talking about this and stuff like that.
Right.
So we went back and we had a major discussion about the Norway Spiral again. And there's some information that we could discuss about the region that the Norway Spiral occurred over, which is where we could say, hint, the collider over there. I'm trying to think of the first name.
Like CERN?
The Hadron. Yeah, the Hadron Collider is in that area. And then years later, we saw a cube come through a wormhole as well over Texas, which we refer to as the Texas Cube, but that's another topic. But anyway, so we started getting sightings of this over and over and over again, time after time in the clouds. Here it was over here, and here it was over there. And then all of a sudden, along about 2011, 2012, there was this black dot in about 75% of the pictures that were coming in from Europe and this and that and the other thing. And then we started getting some close-up pictures and some side shots, and lo and behold, there sits what we now refer to as the Empire Orb, central dot and all. Not the big hole asteroid, because there's one of those out there too that has a big hole in the middle of it. This thing had the eye, and it was parked next to the sun. Repeated shot after repeated shot for literally about 4 or 5 years. And then it transitioned over to in front of some of the other planets that were coming in and started causing like an ion cloud dispersal, or you could refer to as space chems, because it was blocking some of the views of some of the planetary bodies as they were getting more notable and at angles of light which they were perceivable in a better frame. And so over the years with Montana Skywatchers, we've been doing this for 10 years now. We have so many thousands of sightings that we refer to it now as the Empire Orb. And then we'd had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of still captures, but we'd never seen it on an actual footage. And then, of course, I sent you a copy of it this week that came in from Igor. I don't remember what his last name is, and I apologize. He deserves great credit for his capture. Anyway, it's pinned at Montana Skywatcher 2 right now. And it's an absolute credible sighting of the exact same thing I saw. So now if we want to discuss the Hadron Collider, I truly believe, and some other people who may have a level of physics knowledge, and the knowledge of the movie Stargate, I do believe that the Hadron Collider has sent a proton link to another galaxy so that they could achieve a seventh marker.
What's a seventh marker?
For the Stargate, they needed the seventh marker.
Oh, right,
right. 4 points of location. Above time, space.
Locking Chevron 7.
Right, locking Chevron 7.
Yeah.
And what they did with the Hadron Collider is they speed a proton faster than the speed of light, and then they send it someplace else, and it crashes into something, and then it slows down and comes back into a containment area, which they have yet to contain. But anyway, and they keep having problems with the Hadron Collider because it sparks, and they turn the darn thing on, and it shorts out, and it's happened a couple of times. Last time they blamed a weasel chewing on electrical, if you recall. And I believe that has to do with the particles actually getting there before they turn the machine on. Being that they're sending them faster than the speed of light, I believe they're sending them ahead in time. And if they're listening, they can maybe fix their thing with this. But anyway, I believe that the Empire Orb is an intergalactic ship that has come from, like, just, this is a random reference. It's not an actual, like the Gamma Quadrant or the Delta Quadrant from another way. And they arrived here prior to the planetary arrivals and all the other ships and bodies and factions that we are absolutely sighting above Earth every day now for literally almost the last 9 or 10 months, somewhere around there, where all of a sudden they're not hiding anymore. And we're getting regular captures of them up close again. They did it also in 2015 for a few brief periods when Attu's moon and everything was right coming into view and was completely noticeable over the horizon. And it was this perfect round cloud and with this big purple backdrop behind it. And everybody's going, wow, what's that? And if you didn't know, you'd just think it was a weird purple patch in the sky with a funny white dot. But anyway, we've watched this over the years, and it's become a documented event that is so time proven we can no longer argue with it.
So how big of a ship are we thinking this is?
Well, we have seen it parked next to the Texas Cube in some shots, and it is about half the size of the Texas Cube. And this thing is massive. It is, of course, it's impossible to get out your tape measure when from here up in the sky.
Of course. Yeah.
I believe it is literally the size of what the Death Star was in Star Wars.
So small moon.
Small moon. Yeah, and we've seen that the Texas Cube is twice its size, and this summer we saw sightings of 40 or 50 parked galactic battle cruisers, just like the movie Star Wars. And I'm not kidding you; we've got sightings and pictures, and I saw it by eye outside in the northwest sky last summer, and I was like, oh my God! And I don't discuss information that we haven't proven. I'm not trying to come up with a bunch of conspiracy theories, guesses, or anything like this. This is after numerous sightings do I openly discuss this. Otherwise, I'm sure people out there are going to laugh anyway, and they're allowed to, because I've dealt with 40 years of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's far more going on, and it's so cool, and I'm so excited this week that we got that actual live footage that absolutely matched everything I saw. I'm doing a little jig, all
right. So you said you said that this thing came out of what you're referred to as the Norway Spiral, and you've sort of alluded to it as being a wormhole or something like that. So the Norway Spiral was an event. It's not something that's continuously there. Is that correct?
I've actually seen video of it. It's pretty striking, and hundreds of people saw it. I think.
There's also a really. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think like the Norwegian government or something claimed that it was a missile test that went out of control and sort of spiraled off. I don't know. I guess they had to say it was something, right? But it is.
Just go to YouTube and type it in. There's many different copies, and the trick is to find an unedited one. And there's a lot of them have been chopped up, and I'm sure out there some places the original. Because the original shows the darn thing actually come out of the hole, and you can see a change in the lighting and space and everything else. The copy I currently have ends right before it comes through, and I've been searching and trying to find an old one. And maybe if I have somebody in Russia or Hungary, I have a friend named Petty in Hungary. I'll ask him to look in his area. Maybe he'll get a better copy of it. We have to do that sometimes. We have to re-import videos back to our area of the United States or Canada and everything else. They have worse internet than we have. They're blocked in so many ways you wouldn't believe. But that's government censoring, and we have tons of it. But
so you say the Empire Orb. You said that there was another sphere, that the Empire Orb is not the only one.
No, there's multiple smaller little spheres we've had captures of, even close to the Empire Orb itself, which is why we know that it's more than one. And then there's the Texas Cube, which arrived over Texas and over the Texas Collider, believe it or not, which would also back up the wormhole theory in the seventh marker. I mean, otherwise, why are they arriving directly over the top of these things? Mm-hmm. And then there's smaller cubes. There's the long box cube. Now, currently, we've had for the last 2-3 weeks sightings of the Texas Cube between the lead asteroid, and that's another of the OCG's object cluster group. The Texas Cube has been hiding behind the lead asteroid and in between Attu's moon on the left-hand side of the sun. Now, it does cross in over the top of the sun in the early parts of the day. It's changing, so it's hard to call the time. But anyway, it's on the left-hand side of the sun. And for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, the long box cube, which is very much like the Texas Cube, but it has more holes in it and more structural incompletion, shall we say. And it's twice the size of the Texas Cube. And they each have a side orb that is usually sighted exactly in the same spot time after time after time. And that has something to do with the ionization of the clouds and their cloaking abilities, because they cloak themselves using this module that creates an ion drag-off tail when our through space they come in, it's cold, and then it hits our warm atmosphere, and then all of a sudden it puts off this steam mist trail that blocks the view. They also use the sun to block the view, and our best captures are when we're getting side views of square clouds and then you can see a three-dimensional shape, and then there sits the side orb, and it's like, oh, yep, absolutely, you can't argue with it anymore. And then the lead-off clouds and the little pathways that they drag through the clouds, and the Montana Skywatcher 10,000 member plus group, they most of these people know what I'm talking about, but you literally have to see this to believe it. And keep looking up, because on the left-hand side is the Texas Cube and side orb and lead asteroid, and around the right-hand side is the Lombard, time after time after time, and it's just like we can't argue with it anymore. So of course it's become topic of discussion.
Right. So if if these things are showing up and do we have any idea as to why any of this would be going on? You make the guess that we're reaching out and somehow causing this to happen, but do we have any reason why this might be going on?
Well, if you look at the Thunderbird crop circles, and I'll send you a copy of that. I forgot to send that to you. That is referred to by the Mexicans or the Mayans as Quetzalcoatl, and they show the Thunderbird's head is a cube, and then the little beak is a little sort of like little glitchy little thing, and that is the lead asteroid of the object cluster group. And above the head of the Thunderbird is a big circle, and that matches Attu's moon. And I believe that the Thunderbird crop circle is a time marker showing the re-arrival of Quetzalcoatl. And the pictures on the Thunderbird crop circles match the facial markings of the Texas Cube.
So we think there's some sort of tie-in there. I know you don't know the answer to this, but what I'm wondering is if we do think that there's a connection to what we're doing here on the ground to them showing up, is the connection in opposition, or is the connection something that's bringing them here?
Well, this is their return. Every 3,654 years, the two suns come in. And I know that's a hard topic for people to understand, that we have a second sun. We have a binary solar system, two sets of planets, two groups. And they join and cross and exist in co-orbitation for a period of time. And that would account for why all of the weather is going really crazy and all the world's really heating up, because all the planets are heating up. We talked about that in the climate video that you have out. And and then there's this the octagon shapes on top of Saturn, and the changing in the pole values on all the planets are showing these ion patterns that we've never seen before. And that's because it's like the second sun is a large standard red compared to our dwarf yellow Sol, and that's like adding another magnet to the thing. And so there's a celestial ascension where all the life forms in this area of the galaxy in our solar system are being evolved in a DNA genetic ascension is what they call it. Mm-hmm. It's the living ascension. And now this is also coinciding. If you look back at 1650 BC, we had the same occurrence. We had climate change. We had volcanic eruptions. It was the end of the Mycenaean period, beginning of the Bronze Age, the end of the Egyptian First Empire. Climate migration went on, end of major civilizations, end of the Sumerians, end of the Aryans, changing of the people in Russia that moved into Eastern Europe, et cetera, people living underground, et cetera, in that vast city in Cappadocia, which is now in Turkey, and all of this. And that all dates back to that time period of them having to go underground, and climate change and moving, and ends of civilizations, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's evidence pointing through history that this is all correct and cyclic.
So this is probably a good time for me to segue to this. You've noted that there's been quite a few changes in the passing planets. What changes are we seeing there?
Well, when the second sun got here in the late 2011, and we had the CME blowbacks in 2012, that was our sun blowing stellar material back to the larger other sun in an electrical connection. Now, when that all happened, all of the planet's axes tipped drastically. Now, of course, NASA is not telling you this, but it was they briefly announced that, the axis and such has tipped. But all of the planets have done that. And that's because that larger magnet. Now, a lot of people were noticing early in 2011, 2010, that the sun was coming up in the northeast sky, and it was really weird, and the timetables were off, and why are the birds singing at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, the birds have a different point of view, and they are seeing the light of that second sun even before us humans did. And I'm amazed to this day that everybody doesn't notice how weird the sun looks currently right now. And all you have to do is just go out in the middle of the afternoon, come almost 3 o'clock, and look up at the sun, and it is totally not right. But that is because there's planets in the way, and we're looking at the dark side of these planets because they're within the Goldilocks zone between us and the sun. Now, all the planets have tipped. All the planets are heating up because of this second sun. Now, at our different tipped axes, including Earth, and you look at the jet stream right now in the northern hemisphere, and then you look at the jet stream in the southern hemisphere, which used to go opposite directions, are now going one direction. And that happened majorly as of about the turn of this year. And this is, if you look over Africa, the jet stream is flowing backwards. And if you look over Australia, the Arctic jet stream is flowing backwards. And at one point in time, about 2 weeks ago, Arctic jet stream ran from Antarctica all the way up over the Mexican Rockies and all the way over our east coast, which is what caused that huge major storm that went off in Europe last week and the week before. So we're seeing extremities in our weather because our planet is majorly tipped, and our winter access point at the axis is tipped, and therefore Australia is having the heat waves and the fires because their winter angle of light is almost a direct dead on from the two major suns, or if you want to, the co-orbiting pair, and they're frying because they're getting direct sunlight that they don't normally, because we're closest to our sun during winter. It has to do with the orbital oval that we move on and how our axis is in comparison to the summer axis versus the winter axis, if you follow me.
Yeah, I definitely do. So, a question that arises as sort of an argument is, shouldn't we, or can we maybe, be able to track the orbits of these other planets and know exactly where they're going to be at any given moment?
Well, I do a monthly drawing on my site, and we've learned over the last 10 years that they don't change that often. Now, what they've done is they've come down. When we first started getting sightings from Antarctica at Neumayer Station was the best one of the live cams, and of course they've limited some of that access now too. We originally watched it every day on Montana Skywatchers 1 on their live cams, and we had debate parties. And we first started seeing them coming up from there. And then once they broke the horizon line in North America, we started using live cams in Mexico and Australia and et cetera, and started using other live cams for shots. They have spiraled in front of us in our view from 2009 in 4 cycles of spirals. And then when they got to a certain distance from us, they went to the left, and then they went to the right, and then they went to the left, and then they went to the right, and then they came up in our faces, and then Nibiru went away from us, and then the rest of the following tail planets rotated in almost like a spiraling snake in front of us over that first major pass year, which was approximately 2014, 2015. And then that's when we started seeing Isatum and Nepacity and Attu, and then we got a first views of Attu's moon, because we didn't even know Attu even had a moon literally until 2015, when it was close enough where we could actually start documenting events in the cloud patterns and the base cloud patterns. Now, a large part of how you see these planets up in the sky is by understanding the base clouds. And I have a video on YouTube. It's called Understanding the Skies, Edition 1, Samuel Hofman, I think. And you can, look, I can give you a copy of that if you'd like. And once you understand the base cloud patterns of how these ion clouds or drop-off clouds on the bottoms of these planets, when they come within our ionosphere, I can't say our atmosphere, I'd have to say our ionosphere, they have formed these repetitive patterns that over the 10 years we've all learned. And we see these cloud patterns in the sky up there, and God, there isn't another cloud in the sky except for that one, and boy, that one is Nebesity. Or hey, we know that one to be Attu, and it's ion drop tail. Or hey, that big open core is Saru. Or hey, Nibiru does this fingering thing. So we've learned what the planets look like, even though you really, at some point in time, cannot see the actual planet except the dark side. We see the surrounding cloud, base cloud. And then in some cases, we see their crescent. And then in other cases, we see a half full on. And in some cases, as of 2016 and 17, we started seeing the first planetary passes where we saw the full facials, where we went, oh, we know who that is. There's a full facial of that planet. And then, of course, they each have their own colors, their own land masses. Some have land masses, some don't. And now in Nibiru, we've got a lot of really cool landmass pictures. Sarah, we don't have a lot of pictures of because Sarah was briefly here, and she was, when she was here in 215, 216, she was a lot over the top of us. And she has this intensely thick, illuminated core that is just so bright you can't see a lot of her ground. Now Nebesity is green. It's got obviously some volcanic activity because it's got these puffs through its atmosphere, and it's almost like spotted Dalmatian because it's got these puffs through the atmosphere that show some sort of volcanic activity. Attu's moon is very white, and it has all these pock marks, and you can't miss it. Attu has some stripes in there at an angle, but it's purple. It's definitely purple, and that's how we finally knew what the planets were and what to name them when all of these things, all this information started matching some other information I'd gotten in 2009 off the internet, and my Pleiadian meeting / abduction scenario where I got all this information, which we also discussed on previous shows. And they should go back and look if they want this information, boost your views. Anyway, we'll
be sure to link to it all, of course.
Yes, of course, and of course I share your stuff all the time. So you guys are getting views from me alone, and I love your show, and thank you for having me. By the way, I don't think.
Oh, we appreciate it. Of course. Well, you've been on so often. This is it's expected. You've been on so often.
Well, and you called me back, so you're tolerating me, and I thank you for that. I knock people's heads off. Go ahead.
The Nibiru being its own planetary system, why is it that Nibiru is the famous one? Why is not the sun the famous one? Why is it Nibiru that one planet is the famous one?
I think we can thank Zachariah Sitchin for that, because I think that was one of the first major things that he translated. And if you look on even on religious art, and you look on some of the earlier secretive texts that some of the religious folks used to put out, and some of the Egyptians, and you look for these two separate balls on either one side of the picture or the other, and they're these matching things. They're telling us, even the Greeks knew that we had two suns. And that information has been crushed and lost and misrepresented. And if you watch Aliens of the Sky series, which is a phenomenal series, they've even got it mixed with, because the planet Saturn, and that notion that Nibiru is a red planet. Now, the notion behind Nibiru being a red planet, and everybody mistakes when they're talking about the brown dwarf or the red dwarf, and which is a bunch of internet disinformation. Now, the gas giant Hercubus is so big, it holds the two stars in place. And the aliens refer to that as Nibiru, which is the 8th planet out of what now people are talking about, planet 7X, which nobody even knew about that before I gave that information, that there were multiple planets to this solar system. because of my known, 40 years of knowing there was a multiple planetary count along with the second sun, which I was not allowed to tell until 2010 from my 30-year non-disclosure agreement. But that you can look up to in one of the past shows. The gas giant Nibiru is, in my estimation, an electron cluster that holds the two planetary structures and two stars intact. And then every 3,600 to 3,700 years, we rejoin on the same side, like a capacitor. We attract and then discharge and then separate. And it's cyclic, just like the universe breathes, and just like our solar system breathes, just like in subatomic string theory, there's a breath of opening and closing and opening and closing, ebb and flow in everything, including our transition through the galactic plane on the top of the galactic plane. And then 300,000 years later, we dive down through the magnetosphere of the universe into the lower part of the ecliptic plane, which we're currently headed to the upper part. And that was what the Mayan calendar on the fifth age was talking about. Did I confuse you?
No. Speaking of, well, I mean, I'm healthfully confused, but I'm trying to figure it out, But speaking of planes, is the secondary star system, what do we call the secondary star system?
Well, a lot of people refer to it as the Nibiru system, because Nibiru is so big that it would take 7 photographs to get it in one thing. It is behind, if you look at some of the sun pictures out there, and you see that our yellow soul is right there, and then there's this weird little red ring around it, and then way farther out is this brownish red haze behind most of the pictures that you're going to get right now. That brownish red haze is Nibiru.
Okay, so is the Nibiru system on the same plane as the Sol system?
Well, now you're thinking plane because you're thinking Einstein, because Einstein has set forth that we're traveling around on a dinner plate in the same place every day, year after year. That's not how stars travel. Stars travel through virgin space every day, and we follow around our star in a spiral, an electrical, because we live in an electrical universe, not gravitational. We follow in it's like when you pull a sock out of the dryer, you get 3 other socks because they pull. And the stars are the magnet, and the planets are like protons, and neutrons are like moons and dead bodies, and electrons are like comets and all of that. And a degradation of radiation and that sort of thing of the overall compound that are 2 solar systems, which have become, they're not elements, they're a compound, a joined or an astroatomic chemistry equation, which is the unification model that Einstein thought and sought, and the Heisenberg Commission of the 1890s was always seeking a unification model. And the trick is that what works in the subatomic actually also works in the astroatomic. It's space chemistry. I know it's hard to fathom, but that's everything works electrically.
Well, are you saying that? So when I think of the solar system, I think of the sun in the middle and everything coming out of that on a plane, for the most part, in a flat disk. Are you saying this is not the case?
Think of it as we travel sideways rather than with the dinner plate in front of you. Think of the star heading one direction, and we travel in a corkscrew behind them, traveling.
No, I understand that.
Better way to perceive it.
I get that. Okay. Okay.
You can type that up on you. It's called a helixal model of the solar system spiral.
I see. So, every time we talk about Nibiru, I got to put this question out there. There's a couple questions that I always put out there over and over. And it's not that I'm expecting different answers from you, but, I want to make sure that everybody hears it when we talk about it, plus new information arises, and is Nibiru, basically, should we worry about Nibiru or this other star system destroying the planet Earth?
No, they're not. They are not going to shoot themselves in the foot. Earth is the factory planet. We provide commodities, much needed commodities. We are the backwater on the other side of the tracks people. Mm-hmm. And we serve the larger other solar system and their higher tech and their other 2 major planets, and I'm told, I don't have absolute fact behind this, but I'm told that there are 3 races that live within the Nibiru system, or the Imaru system, excuse me.
What are the 3 races?
I do not know. We could refer to them. I say I've never met one of those guys off of that planet, so I don't have absolute facts for you. I have tons of gossip, but sure. I haven't been able to stick, that pin on the pegboard and say, well, this is it. So I try not to spread unknown knowledge. No, I have met 3 races. I have met a Draco. I have met more than my share of Greys. Actually, one scientist Grey, and several other Greys who were of the lesser caste because they have different levels. And then I have met a Pleiadian. And I can absolutely, and I'm not talking channeling or sighted or anything, but I'm talking actual physical face-to-face. How do you do?
Right.
And to answer your question, they do not need to invade. They already own Earth. And this is not the first time that this cycle has happened. Within the last 300,000 years, in the last management regime change, who owns our area of space, this has happened 83.3 times. So they won't invade. They're not going to destroy us. They're not going to come down and eat us, from what I understand. Although there may be a few rogue factions that fancy cow lip stew, like we've talked in the past.
Yeah.
And it's like Star Wars.
That's distasteful.
There are so many life forms out there. There are rogue guys flying around in this craft and that craft, and something they pieced together from the Ferengi, which is a joke.
Right.
And there's so many factions up there that people have got to realize that this is not just 7 guys coming down in a saucer landing and abducting people and sampling their DNA or anything like that for a test back home. These are multiple factions that are here with many sightings of many, 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 many ships. And they're all here for the ascension. They're all here to pick up the commodities. And number one specific one is gold, because that prolongs their life and it's a huge part of their technology. And I don't often talk about that.
So you talk about how they get commodities from us. It's almost like we're a intergalactic sweatshop. How do we know that we're this? How do
you want the whole truth?
Well, yes.
Well, I mean, are you going to hang up on me if I tell you?
I don't know. Is it mean to me? As long as it's audio, no.
I don't think we'll hang up on you.
Okay, well, I'm quoting the Pleiadian that was 7 foot tall with a really funky back of his head, and I sat and talked to him for a couple hours.
Uh-huh.
And he informed me that we were not created by God. We were created by demigod. We are a clone race with a clipped 24th chromosome. Otherwise, we would live longer and self-heal, which they do as well. The alien races, the Annunaki, etc., they live up to a couple of thousand years. And we are a combination of 12 genetic manipulations into one, and then mixed with the genome of the ape that lived here. And we are here mining this planet, which is a rock type planet compared to their water type, which is a much larger body. And that's why they're larger as well, because they live in a gravitationally larger area with higher condensation of oxygen in the atmosphere, etc., because of its barometric pressure, which is why when Earth used to be highly more oxygenated, our animals were much, much larger, like the woolly mammoth, for instance.
Oh, yeah. And some of the bugs were freaky huge.
Right. And when the oxygen levels overall and the nitrogen levels started increasing, the oxygen levels decreased, our animals over time through evolution got smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, these are larger beings. And if you watch The Gods of Egypt, that movie, it's a great movie. They put out a lot of really interesting hints toward reality, and we all know Hollywood does good and bad hints. Like there's multiple factions running it. But anyway, that's conspiracy theory. Anyway, where was I? I'm getting lost.
Basically, we're talking about how do we know that we're this intergalactic sweatshop?
They need us. We produce the stuff that prolongs their lives. Like if you've seen the movie Dune, we're the spice. We're the spice planet.
We're Arrakis. Yes, I'm a nerd.
We're Arrakis. and they come to us and they collect the spice, and because it prolongs, it's like trying to give up gas tomorrow. They're not going to do that. And Earth has been doing this cycle. We're not the first generation of people to do this. We're not the first version. There have been hundreds of us, hundreds of copies, and this has been going on for what I understand well over 1 million years.
I see. So what's next for us, for these systems for the next few years?
Well, we're going to see our weather's going to get worse. We look at the past for a reference toward the future, and we're going to see more tectonic plate displacement. This is how very large areas of land go standing straight up in the mountain ranges. We're going to see a lot more volcanoes. We're going to see a lot more bad weather. We're going to see a lot more bad storms. Look at all the high winds. Look what's happening to the East Coast today and tomorrow, from Texas all the way through. And this has to do with those jet stream changes and the tipping axis, and we're at boil off because of the intensity of the sun. Our atmosphere is full of much more moisture. When the planets cross, they drag atmosphere and then drop it back down on us. When the object cluster groups close past Earth, they do the same thing. It's like putting a spoon through the soup. It stirs it up even worse. So we're going to see a lot more. We're going to see a lot more flooding. We're going to see a lot of coastal tidal flooding. We're going to see sloshing of the oceans if we keep rocking back and forth on some of these close passes. We may even see such a close pass where like an entire tectonic plate area just suddenly ripped and pulled across hundreds of miles of terrain within seconds or minutes. I don't know fully, or it could be a slow, gradual process, which it has been doing as well. There's reports that the continent of Africa is largely moving. We've seen evidence of the Mediterranean Ocean becoming larger. We've seen that the Saudi Arabia area has got a brand new huge crack that is forming as Africa is moving in some ways to the south and in some ways to the southwest. And that's where the escarpment on the lower southern parts of between Madagascar and Africa is also increasing on that crack. So we're seeing change, and we're seeing drastic change. And if you look, they've got a major locust population going on in Africa right now. And that's because the jet stream is going backwards, and they've never seen this amount of rain in millennium. And this is where these dormant eggs that are all underground are getting water for the first time, and they're having millions of locusts grow up because they're actually coming out of dormancy.
With Nibiru and its planet cluster being here, and the ships and the Empire Orb and the Texas Cube, and them basically using us for commodities, like you were saying, gold, is this happening every 3,600 years about? Is this something that we should rebel against, or is this something we should just let happen and move on?
That's a really good question. And I have kind of a message that I have to spread about this. And I've been kind of wondering how I would broach this. And this is a perfect opportunity. Thank you. We are supposedly going to have to share Earth after the catastrophe and after our beginning of our next cycle. So we are supposed to, and this was what I was told, we're supposed to accept these changes, and we're supposed to get rid of some of our prejudices. If we can't even get along amongst our own people, how the hell are we going to do it with another race? And we have to be tolerant, and we also have to understand that their tech level, I don't know if you saw that draconian false video that somebody made that was going to be a movie. That was a couple of years ago, and I wish I had a copy of it. I keep looking, I haven't found one yet. We're going to have to accept that their tech level is so highly advanced that there is really no arguing with them. And I know that President Trump has decided to create a space force and all of this. That's probably his point of view. Well, we better fight the bastards. But their tech level is so much more advanced. They don't even need doors, okay? They can come and go as they can, and the higher races above. Now, remember, there are different elevations of tech level amongst different races and beings, and you could call them demigod above demigod above demigod. Now there's a lot of factions out there. Some of them have advanced tech that can actually travel through time, And that was how the Pleiadian was able to look me up, because supposedly he's from the future and they have all this stuff recorded. And he sat there and gave me huge portions of my life, which has come true. And nothing that this man, 7 foot tall with a weird head and the white clothes, standing there next to his spacecraft and his little grays running all over the place, because the grays serve the higher races, by the way. And they're nasty when they're not supervised, unless they're higher tech levels. And then they're quite interesting people to talk to. And they don't talk to you, they just think to you. Anyway, that's another story. We have to understand that we have rights, and that would be the prime directive. And if you're an enlightened person and you open yourself up to the acceptance of the other races, that any being has the right to be where they are unmolested, which is what this is, a free will zone. Earth is a free will zone. And if we treat them with malice, then they have the right to treat us as an animal. If we treat them with respect and reverence and non-bias, then they have to treat us equally the same, which is the prime directive. Every being has the right to be where they are unmolested until that rule is changed. Now, if you shoot at these guys, they're going to shoot back.
Well, is this like a prime directive kind of thing? Like, because it kind of seems like we're basically enslaved by these things, but are you saying that we're reaching a point where we would move from animal to
right.
peer?
Now, everybody knows the mythos about Enki and Enlil, and how the over-god told Enki and Enlil that they would have to allow some of us to evolve out. And some of this is the key word. Not everyone is going to ascend, and not everyone is going to want to go to another race or tech level because of the discomforts and the societal discomforts that would occur. And, you wouldn't have your beer, and you wouldn't have your football, and you wouldn't have this, and you wouldn't be able to go down to the tack shop and have a conversation with the good old boys. So not everyone will evolve. And the time that first contact, majority of first contact yet to come, is going to be when there are a lot less of us. And I was told about that as well. So we don't really have a choice. We have to accept this and grow, or remain slaves within the next generation of the next cycle prior to them coming back to receive commodities again.
So there is some sort of catastrophe coming.
Well, you know about the Georgia Guidestones.
No.
And we know that there is an Agenda 21. And you can go off on all of these different segments and not get caught up into the foobar that goes along with that. I recommend that people remain in the middle when it comes to some of this extreme information that they're looking up, because a lot of it drives people crazy and breaks up families, so they shouldn't do that. We have to have a level of tolerance and acceptance. When these guys come land down on, the ballpark like they did in the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, you're going to have 18 different kinds of reactions. You're going to have the Bible thumpers going, "Oh, the devil's here," or you're going to have, "I'll give my gun," or "I'll take me with you," and all this other stuff that could go on. So they're going to wait for first contact till there's far less of us. Not only that, they can control us, and humans have an off switch. And if they really want to, they just turn us off.
That's terrifying.
We don't really have much of a choice. They have a technology which will shut us down, and I've been party to that. That's how they first abducted me, and within minutes I sat up, and they went, "What? How did you do this? You can't be doing this right now. You're supposed to be off." And that's when they sat down and talked to me, because they found out that I was not just your average abductee. I was not average Joe Facebook either. So, and that this is where I got the story, and then they found out who I was, and they or will be, and so he spent the extra time trying to teach me that, or continuing the time loop as it already exists. That yes, I did do this in the future, and thanks to that, it's sort of a time loop, Marty and Doc and all of that crazy stuff. I mean, it's nuts. It's really hard to keep all of this going in my head and actually believe it myself, and yet I've had evidence of it so overwhelmingly I can't argue with it anymore. And laugh all you want in your homes and by your television sets or wherever, but this is what happened, and I'm actually trying to share the actual truth that this is coming in, and I would absolutely love to be wrong, because I like going to the store for that gallon of milk and buying my chicken wings and all this other stuff. But we're coming into a catastrophe. Look at food prices. Look what's happening in the Midwest. We're seeing food shortages everywhere around the world already. We're seeing major diseases. Look at the coronavirus. By the way, the coronavirus is less deadly than this year's flu, and people should really relax a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
True.
Killed, we were talking about
there's been
that.
over 8,000 deaths this year from our flu, and there's 2 of them. So you want to worry about something, worry about getting the flu, and don't take the flu shots, because they're trying to keep people suppressed. And because as long as they have power, then they're going to have us, after the shit hits the fan, pardon the expression, they'll be able to muster us as a workforce. Because all of these factions have ideas what they're going to do.
Right. They have different agendas.
Right. It's not good and evil. It's factional agenda.
So, you were talking about how you're trying to get the message out, and you seem to have problems sometimes getting blocked, getting banned. Do you think that people are purposefully trying to block you from getting this information out?
Well, you should hear background noise on the phone right now. That answers your question for you. When I first started doing this, the second month after I got online and started, because I don't try to cover classified information. I still stick to the rules, and I hint and I make metaphors and things like this. And 2 months after this happened, my house was fried electrically. Like somebody walked in here, and because I knew something was wrong with the door when I tried to get in, and then I walked in the house, and half my house was fried, and none of the breakers were kicked off in my house. And yet things that were not plugged in even didn't work, like my water pick or my stereo, my extra stereo didn't work, and it wasn't plugged in, and my carpet shampoo and my vacuum cleaner, they were all fried. So somebody EMP'd my house and fried my computer and a good portion of the information and the Library of Congress information that I had just downloaded, which showed. See, I went to the Library of Congress and looked up whether or not I was crazy, because I was recruited for the Far-Seeing Project, which I'm now allowed to talk about it because it's been declassified. And I looked up the Far-Seeing Project and their funding, and come to find that the G7 had refunded it in 2003, and within a week my house was fried.
So, what is the Far-Seeing Project?
It's remote viewing. Major Ed Dames was in charge of the project, and they recruited high physics-minded. I was a chemistry whiz kid. To me, it was just easy. I finished equations Einstein couldn't finish. And then my teacher sent them in, and that's when they gained my notice. And I'd also I'm Dutch, and they recruit people with high physics skills and high ESP quotient. And a far-seeing person sits down, and then they give you a target, and you sit in a room with a bunch of other people, and you get a tablet of blank paper, and you write down your feelings on what you see in your mind about their target. And they had several rooms full of doing this at the same time. And then they took all that information and compared notes. And they were using originally to spy on Russia. And now, during this very brief period of time that I was involved in this, I saw more than that. And I didn't report it. And that was part of what made me make my decision that I no longer wished to be part of that, even though they were providing my permanent residence on an Air Force base for the rest of my life, which they told me that I would never fit in society. But then they brought me back to Montana after rebelling and in handcuffs, and I had to re-sign up for the world, and I didn't even exist anymore. So that's another story. But I know that they're messing with me for a number of reasons. My phone has been clipped numerous times. I've had the white van with the guys sitting in the back with the computer gear next to my house a few times, and brand new these new really cool cargo vans. And one morning I walked up to them with a box of donuts, and I said, "Guys hungry?" And they pulled the curtain on me, and the next day they were gone. So you
were just trying to be neighborly.
And for instance, I have an icon that pops up on my computer screen regularly, not all the time. But when they're monitoring me, I can see that they're doing that. And then they're monitoring note type for type, letter for letter, what I'm typing. And I don't presume to be not viewed. And when I talk on my cordless phone, I can hear an echo from the other room. So I know there's probably, and I hate to say this stuff because I don't want to sound like a conspiracy nut, Paul, but I know that they're probably listening as we speak. So, and this is, of course, I'll reach as far as I dare go, and then I'll hint and make metaphors from then on.
So this leads me to believe that different groups of humans who are, tailing you and bugging you are not necessarily working with all of them. There may be different groups of humans working with different factions to different agendas.
I'm sure that there are. I'm sure that the Israelis have one. I'm sure the government has one. I bet you the French have a faction. I bet you that certain religious groups have, like the Catholics probably have a faction. The Roman Catholics, I'm sure that the Jews have a faction. I'm sure, there's Teutonic Knights secrets that you and I need to talk about sometime, not on public, but because there's a whole big, huge plan that has been in ever since we referred to the Enki and the Allele decree. There's been a decree that has been in place through numerous groups to further it and to stop it at the same time, different groups. And they want certain things to occur while other groups want certain things, the Bilderberg and all of this and the world banking and the petro, and there's all these different factions, and everybody thinks it's just one, but there's many. There's, I'm not even going to list a few of them because then they'll come after me.
Well, with this high technology and us basically just being gene edited monkeys, what hope do we have?
Well, there are certain people who are already on the planet that are wearing higher upgrades. They have genetic changes that are happening right now, and those who know it, they know it. They feel it. They've already gotten the tap on the shoulder that it says, I'm starting to awaken, things are happening that I never experienced before, and I'm having knowledges that I can't account for. And those people out there listening know who they are, and you can contact me as well. Being awake to this subject pretty much guarantees you that you're in the awake department. When you're knowing about this, you're knowing about it for a reason. And those that are not genetically inclined, that's the word, genetically inclined, will probably not listen to a word of what I have to say.
Right. Oh, I see. Well, it's not unlike, I think we might have brought it up before, as Childhood's End, that Arthur C. Clarke book, where, part of humanity evolved, but the other part didn't.
Right. And because they're not going to break the system, the factory planet will continue.
Yeah.
They will follow the decree that they've been given by their overlords, because, they created us. They've used us for X amount of years. And because we are, now the Pleiadians, they believe us to be worthwhile, that we should evolve out and be brought up to the higher tech levels. And they're like the ASPCA for humans. And they consider us worthwhile and believe that we should be accelerated into the evolution where we can start living for 2,000 years as well. And some races live even longer. And now there's life out there that we don't even account for. There's space bugs, there's space whales, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And of course, NASA is not going to tell you about that. And man hasn't been on the scene long enough to go far enough out to even see any of this. And of course, they don't want you to know.
Why isn't NASA? Why doesn't NASA want us to know? Or is it because of a tie to one of the factions?
Well, let's use the coronavirus as an example.
Okay.
Look at how far everybody's going on just knowing about this coronavirus. They're
that's true.
All over the world.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you've got your researchers, and then you've got your people that aren't going to listen at all, and then you've got your persons that's going to wash their hands and they'll change their ways. And then there's the person that doesn't even care. Mm-hmm. Nor does he wash his hands when he leaves the toilet in the public restroom, and then grabs that door handle. So
no, I get you. I get you. It's the mob mentality that, right. the smarter talking about it, and the rest are dangerous.
And look what would happen to their tax revenue if everybody knew that we were clones. And these people who can't deal with it are going to jump off the nearest bridge. Oh my God, there's no hope for me, and God isn't going to take me into heaven.
Right.
and then all of a sudden, we've got chaos going on. Some people will die, some people will go crazy, some people will go, well, that means there's no devil, so I can go out and steal all I want. So there's a number of reasons why they don't tell you. And there's a lot of reasons they think that we're unfortunately too stupid. And unfortunately, in some ways, they're correct.
Right. Okay, well, unfortunately,
I've been on this for 25 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're at the end here. So why don't you tell our audience where they can find out more, where they can follow you, where they can see some of these pics and catch some of these videos?
Okay, well, you can send a membership request to Montana Skywatcher 2. You have to type it in.
And that's a Facebook group.
Right, that's a Facebook. And to find my older videos and some of my earlier material prior to them stalling me from being able to even upload, type my name in, Samuel Hofman, Samuel Hofman, 1 F instead of 2, and Hofman, Dutch version instead of the German, on YouTube, and you'll see a 10 or 15 or 20 of my videos or more.
All right, sounds good. Samuel, thank you for being on the show again, and always, it's always fun to talk to you, and it's always fun to learn what you have to teach.
Well, I really want to thank you for having me back again, and I really enjoy doing your show, so wonderful. Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to Samuel Hofman here on Radio Wasteland.